I was inspired by one of my children who was finding life extremely hard. And the time when he was finding life very hard meant that I also found life really hard. And I needed to find ways to stay calm through that period and be there for him and to be steady and supportive. And I became really interested in the idea that actually the most important thing for us as parents was to keep our cool. And we can't be overwhelmed when our children are overwhelmed. We've got to be steady. And that was the spark. That's what made me think, okay, how am I going to go from being an anxious mum to a nice, relaxed mum? My mental health journey meant that I was well equipped when I came to parenting teenagers because I'd already had a long battle with my own anxiety and depression over many years. And I had found some good tools to look after myself. But I found I had to go up several gears when it came to parenting teenagers because the challenges are huge and it's really tough. But I did find ways to stay calm and I did manage to turn myself from an anxious mum into a calm and relaxed one. Teenagers are often misunderstood. A lot is going on for them. Their brains are changing, and it's easy as parents to take it personally. We're only just getting to grips with what's really happening to teenage development. And the less we can think it's about us, and the more we realize that they are becoming their own people, this process is called individuation. And our role is to support and guide them, not to think it's all our fault and that we're wrong. There's a tremendously kind of right wrong narrative going on, and that parents are wrong. And actually, teenagers think we're wrong and we think they're wrong. Actually, neither of us are right or wrong. We're in it together. We can grow together. We'll come through together and we can understand them. And actually, they can understand us. Teenage years are often seen as a dark time, a difficult time. We can look at this really differently. This is a amazing time for our own psychological growth. And it's always the case that we grow and learn and develop and become more interesting, more profound, deeper human beings when things are difficult. Success is a lousy teacher. So we can look at this period, which is full of challenges, as something that can teach us about our own emotional regulation, our thinking styles, the wounds that we may have received. And we can change and grow through this period. And that's how I think we should reframe this difficult time. Raising teenagers really allowed me to understand the basic idea that all of us, our main connection is with ourselves. We spend more time with our own thoughts and feelings than with anybody else. And we've got to get them in line. We've got to sort them out. We've got to be on top of them. We've got to learn how to regulate ourselves, learn how to challenge our negative thoughts. And this is the opportunity that the teenage years give us. And it's an amazing chance to grow and learn ourselves. I think that would be the number one thing that this period has taught me. Connection is the key word, I think, when it comes to raising teens. And every time you find yourself wanting to control them, which is understandable, see if you can step back and say, connect, 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 rather than control. And actually, these aren't false opposites in a way, because our best chance of influencing and supporting and encouraging our teenagers to be good human beings is to stay connected. And it's from that place of open communication, discussion, being able to imagine how they're seeing things that we're likely to elicit much better cooperation and behavior. So it's not an either or. But if we start with connection, we're much more likely to find that a teenager will learn how to control themselves. If you think about it, we can't actually control them, much as we might like to think we can. We've got to teach them how to control themselves. And we do that by our own modeling, our own dealing with our own thoughts and feelings, and working with them, working together, connecting, not controlling. There are ways to stay calm in the face of teenage anger and teenage withdrawal. You shout up the stairs and they don't come down. There are three things that I have learnt to do. The first phrase I hang on to and I repeat to myself. And I do think repeating phrases and using mantras is super helpful. So the one I like, strike when the iron is cold. You, as a parent, are not going to take good decisions and you're not going to interact and you're certainly not going to connect if you are gripped by a very strong emotion yourself. So step back, strike when the iron is cold. So that's the first thing. Remember that mantra. The second thing is actually literally to take time out. Take yourself out of the situation. Walk around the block, look at the sky, sit in the sunshine, don't go on your phone, even have a bath. Just take yourself out of the situation. You can repeat to yourself your mantra, which, as you know, is strike when the iron is cold. And the third thing is really important, is to realize that their strong feeling probably has got very little to do with you. I found that things went awry when I imagined that their fury was about me personally. And then I got defensive or I got upset. It's not. There's so much going on for them. So it's not about you, it's about them. So, yeah, mantras, stepping out and realizing it's about you, not them. And it works. Listening is absolutely key to getting on with your teenagers. And it's something I've had to learn how to do. I think all of us want to jump in there with answers, and especially as parents, especially as mums. And of course, it's true. Sometimes we are more experienced and we do have ideas for them. But it's interesting. I've never known a teenager listen to any advice, certainly not if they haven't asked for it. So, first thing to remember is they're not going to listen to you anyway, unless they've actually chosen to. So, your role is to turn it around and actually listen to them. You can turn control into curiosity. I think listening to them is actually super fascinating if you allow yourself to do it. The way I think you should do it is every time you find a thought bubble popping into your head and you think, oh, I love to tell them this, I'd love to tell them that, whew, hold back and just see if you can just not voice that thought. And actually, it's super interesting. They may have more interesting thoughts than you. So, yeah, listening is absolutely crucial. It is a skill that you've got to develop. I always remember 2 ears, one mouth. 2 ears, one mouth. And that is the answer to remembering to listen. We've got to become empathetic as parents. Actually, I don't think it's that hard. I think most parents want to be empathetic. The way I found it best to develop empathy is to actually do a little bit of neuroscience. And I've got a chapter in my new book, The Gift of Teenagers, about trying to understand the teenage brain. And there's a few things going on. The more you understand what's going on, the more you're likely to be empathetic. The first thing that's going on is that teenagers have a tremendous pressure to hang out with their peers. They're trying to find their own tribe. They're separating from you. That's super stressful for them. If you want to be empathetic to your teenager, understand the pressure they're under. It's life or death for them who they sit next to in the school hall at lunch. So that's the first thing that's happening to their brain. This social instinct is developing. I think the second way to develop empathy, again, come back to the brain, different bits of the brain that developed at different stages, but basically the impulse bit of the brain is really strong in teenagers. And the slow cognitive, hang on, that's not such a great idea, bit in the brain is not so developed. Vast simplification. But in terms of you being an empathetic parent, again, don't take it personally if, they forget to tell you that they're coming home or they have a drink too many. They're not good at impulse control right now. And it's not really their fault. They've got these wonky brains. So, yes, watch out for peer pressure. Watch out for the lack of impulse control. And the third thing I think to remember in the teenage brain is that what's happening is teenagers are super sensitive. They are so reactive to almost anything you say. You might just think raising an eyebrow because they show up late for dinner is no big deal. That might be a dagger to their heart. It's almost as like imagine them as having 4 or 5 fewer layers of skin than you. Again, this is what's happening to their brain. So, yeah, if you want to be an empathetic parent, remember those things: peer pressure, the pressure they're under, they don't have very good impulse control, and they're super sensitive. It's all about them. That doesn't mean you are a bad mum or dad. Yeah. It makes a difference, I promise you. Look, my heart goes out to you. It is so painful when a teenager doesn't want to talk to you. And goodness, have I known that myself with my own 5 children. The way I found to manage this is to just honor that desire. You would really like to connect with them. You'd love them to talk to you. I mean, wouldn't it be gorgeous if they said, let's go for a coffee? They're quite unlikely to say that. That doesn't mean to say you had to shut down that desire. You can't actually easily shut down your feelings. You would really love that to happen. You can stay with the feeling, maybe do a little bit of meditation and breathing, and just honor and allow that desire that you really feel for that connection. But just keep coming back to the fact that you can't force the outcome. And what's really interesting, I found, is that less you try and force that outcome with a teenager, unless the less you say, be there at 1 o'clock or whatever, there'll be terrible sanctions, the much more likely they are to join you because they're not being forced. And let's face it, who wants to be bossed around? I mean, I don't want to be told what to do. I mean, and your teenagers certainly don't want to be told what to do. But that's not the same as not as shutting down your feeling and your desire. It's there, honor it, be with it, and let go, forcing the outcome. And if you do that, I bet you'll find you reconnect with your teenager. Please let me know. And there's loads in this book about how you actually do those sorts of practical exercises. I structured The Gift of Teenagers around the theme of connection because I think it's just absolutely central to who we are as humans. I think it's what we all really want. We all really want connection with each other. It starts with really being at ease and being connected with yourself. So, section one of my book is how you're going to do that. And it's looking at your thoughts, it's looking at your feelings, it's looking at the parenting style you received, your relationship with your partner, if you have one, both ways. Dads looking at their relationships with their wives, wives looking at the relationship with their husbands, single parents looking at relationships with other caregivers looking after or raising their teenagers. So that's the first section, connecting with yourself. I think the second natural section is how are you going to connect with your teenager? So that's all about building that relationship, connecting tools, really practical things about what you might say to elicit a conversation. We talked a bit before about listening. How are you actually going to do that? So we want to build this correct connection very directly with our teenagers. It's about being present. It doesn't necessarily mean a lot of time. Lots of working parents are worried, they haven't got enough time, all this talk of connection. I've got a nice thing that works really well, which is the 5 minute rule. You literally get an egg timer, settle down for 5 minutes, you and your teen, and just agree you are going to have a proper conversation. Amazing how much you can say in 5 minutes. And there's practically no teen that's going to say no to that because I think, well, 5 minutes is not very long. So, yeah, connecting with your teenagers, practical ways to do that. The next section, the third section of the book, is understanding your teenagers' connection with themselves. Just like the first section is about you understanding your connection with yourself. There's a lot going on for teenagers in terms of connecting with themselves. They've got so much to deal with. They've got hormonal changes. So I've got a section there about understanding their sexuality, what's going on for them. They've got lots of changes around their identity. Gender is a big topic for young people and parents, but it's also a topic more broadly. What is identity right now? It could be spiritual identity, religious identity. How do they see their identity? What does that mean? And then teenagers are connecting and getting at ease with their bodies. And again, what a lot is going on for them. How do they feel good about their bodies? And lots of young people are really challenged, and social media obviously comes into that about they don't feel good about themselves. So yeah, section three, connecting, a teenager connecting with themselves and what that looks like, and how you can guide them and support them through all these big shifts that are going on for them. The fourth section is their connections with other significant people in their life. Because yes, we're their parents or caregivers, we're their mums or dads, but the point is that they have a lot of other connections going on. They've got connections with their friends. We've already talked about the teenage brain and the importance of peer pressure. Lots of challenges with their friendships. How are they going to navigate that, particularly beginnings, endings, challenges with their romantic relationships? There's a big issue for teenagers around consent. What does that look like? How can they safely start a romantic relationship? How can they safely end a romantic relationship? If you ask teenagers what they're really worried about, one of the things they're really worried about is romantic relationships. So, yeah, so connecting with their own peers, but also connecting with other significant adults in their lives. So their teachers, their grannies, maybe coaches, mentors, other people that they're going to come across, and what do those relationships look like? And actually, I think one of the things I learned that I was trying to do it all and thought it was all about me, and obviously partly because I had a big family, but I realized more and more it's just so great to have other people's attitudes and other people's approaches and fresh voices, because we're not looking for mini me's. We're looking for those teenagers to become who they truly are. And they may be better suited at different points to be talking to other significant adults. So, yeah, so that's section 4, which is teenagers connecting to other people in their world. I then move in kind of what I hope you think is a natural uh, narrative. I then talk about a teenager's connections with the wider world. So that is looking at things like social media, how they're connecting with millions of people potentially. It's also looking at connecting with the world that they're in. They're under a lot of academic pressure, quite a lot of them. They're worried about their role in the world. They're worried about their future. They're worried about their jobs. They feel very, very pressurized. Again, if you ask them what's really concerning them, parental pressure is a huge topic for them. So, connecting with the world, also connecting with the world of drugs, the world of drink, the world of risk, the world of pornography, all these aspects of connecting to their world. And of course, you know, every generation thinks the next generation is completely different. And this is true, but it is especially dramatic right now that the world they're connecting with is very different for many parents compared to the world that we grew up in. And trying to understand that. And I know this might sound a little bit sort of, I'm quite a positive person, but actually, you could be really curious about their world. And we've got quite a lot to learn. I felt that one of the joys of this period was I learned so much about the world that they were in. And a lot of it is amazing. And then there's amazing new ways of thinking about things, which is so refreshing. So it's not all bad by any means. And then the last section, we got to that was section 5, connecting with the world. And then I think the last section is connecting with help. So most of what I'm writing about is sort of normal ups and downs of everyday life and everyday parenting. But sometimes all of us need a bit of extra help. Now, where are you going to find this help? How are you going to connect with it? Where is it? What different kind of help is available? What is suitable? Is it helpful to get a diagnosis if your child is suffering? Are there other approaches? And so that would be my last section of connecting with help. But this thread of connection, understanding it, discovering it, being curious about it is really a kind of theme, a leitmotif if you're literarily minded, running through the book. And I think it's a huge lesson that I had to learn was actually we all want connection, and how can we feel more connected as parents to our teenagers? And hey, the good news is you really can. There were two sections of the book that were very, very personal, and I had to be careful because while I'm happy to share my story and what I've learned, that's not quite the same as sharing the story of some very challenging things that happened to some of my children. So while I did learn from them and I was able to be informed by what had happened, I also talked to lots of other people as well. But the particular sensitivity for me was the chapter on bullying. So, two of my children were really quite badly bullied. That was very painful to write about. It was painful to remember what happened to them. It was very painful to remember the lack of support I got from the schools. It was painful to realize that everything I've been saying about being nice and calm was really difficult through that period. It was difficult not to blame myself. It was difficult to try and understand the best way through. I did find a way through. The key learning for me was not to see them as a victim, to realize that even when times were tough and my children were being bullied, they were strong. And I had to believe in them and build up them and build up their strengths and get them to realize how strong they were. and they would come through, and they did come through, but it was very, very painful. So that was really difficult to write about. The second chapter, as it were, or section that was difficult to write about was getting help and dealing with mental health professionals. Because again, I had personal experience of one of my children finding life very difficult. And again, that was hard to remember. And any parent, mum, dad, caregiver who is navigating the child and adolescent mental health system does not need me to tell them that this is really difficult to get support, and it's really difficult to get the help you need if one of your teenagers is struggling. And that was a difficult chapter to write. I think what brought me through, and the reason I'm so inspired and I was just so determined to write this book, was that I learned a lot on the way. And there are ways to navigate the system, and you can get help, and you can learn how to be the best support you want to be for your teenager who is struggling. And recovery is possible. Recovery is possible. Emotional regulation sounds slightly scary, like it's a sort of tax affair or something. I think the learning for me was that we needn't be scared of emotions. Emotions can be really helpful. They can be like a GPS system. We can stay with them and be with them. The real trick is not to fight them and try and shut them down. What we resist persists. What we resist persists. So if you're feeling sad, and who doesn't feel sad as a teenage parent? If you're feeling angry, oh my God, who doesn't feel angry? I think in the past, my tendency was to shut those feelings down and trying to get them to go away. But the more you stay with them and the more you allow them, the quicker they dissipate. And they're not scary. There's just literally no feeling you can't manage. The best way for me to manage them is to use some of the breathing techniques. So if you are physically calm, you're likely to be emotionally and psychologically calm. Your body goes into the parasympathetic nervous system, which again sounds scary but isn't. It's the calm, the rest and digest system. And breathing can just bring us back and allow those feelings. So the 4-4-4-1, there's so many different breathing techniques. Everybody's different, different size lungs, but basically breathing in slowly and then holding for 4 and then breathing out for 4. But your counting might be different. That one's a nice one. Sometimes the out breath just being longer than the in breath. So you breathe in, whew, and just stay breathing out for that little bit longer. That's one thing. Breathing exercises are great. The other thing, emotions can be less scary if you name them. Don't get totally identified with them. So, not I am sad, I am angry, I am furious with you, you nasty little bit of teenager. Don't think I've ever said that actually. But let's just separate a bit and just say, I am feeling sad right now, which acknowledges it's a feeling, it's for now, and it will pass. I am feeling angry right now. So just to recap, we've got the breathing exercises and acknowledgement. We've got the linguistic trick of saying I'm feeling this rather than I am this, and it's for now. And the third one, which is a really nice one, is give yourself a bit of space and just use your first name. And it sounds really odd. And when you first do it, you probably think, oh, I'm being really odd. But just say, Rachel is feeling really angry right now. And it just allows for a bit of space between you and your emotion, because you're not your emotion. Your emotion is going to pass. It's a cloud, it's going to pass. Rachel is feeling really stressed right now. And then step back. So those are 3 really nice ways I found to cope with challenging emotions. And they're going to come up as a parent of teenagers. I love the idea that raising teenagers is actually a chance for mutual growth. I think this speaks to the idea that it's a joint process. We're in this together. And I think the world often has a kind of philosophy, which I don't actually agree with, of a kind of hierarchy. So we, the parent, are up here and our teenager is down here. It's true, we are the adult in the room, but the more we see this as a kind of collective endeavor whereby we're going through this together and we're learning different things. We as parents are going to be learning different things from our teenagers. At times, we're teachers and they are more, as it were, learning from us. But at times, we're learning from them. And this sense of mutual reciprocity, it's a lovely feeling of giving and receiving, that it's in a kind of nice, lovely, warm, kind of virtuous loop. And it isn't so transactional. I'm telling you what to do, or sometimes you're telling me what to do, which obviously teenagers love to tell us what to do. It's much more of in a kind of rounded loop, giving, receiving, learning, growing, and we're doing it together. We're in this together. And that whole attitude will affect how your teenager responds to you. Because again, who wants to be bossed around? Who wants to be made lesser? Who wants to be in a hierarchy that somehow they're, you know, less than us? No, they're a burgeoning adult. They're learning, growing, they're becoming themselves. As I say, let's not take this too far. Sometimes we have to be an adult in the room, but we are in this together. And that's just such a lovely thing to remember. It was just such fun researching this book. I am curious. I'm a journalist by trade. I worked at the Times. I love to discover more. And I just got to meet so many incredible people who'd given really their life's work to understanding adolescent mental health. One of the most striking people I spoke to was a child stroke teen psychotherapist. And she told me that when she works with teenagers, she likes to have the parents there too, which of course, absolute catnip to me, music to my ears, because I'm very interested in this kind of co-collaboration of working together. She said she made little stick models. So the two parents and the teenager. So the troubled teenager and the two parents. And they're stick models. Uh, and then she was working with the three of them therapeutically. She said the one thing that every teenager she had ever worked with that goes completely mental is if the two parent stick figures fall down. I thought, oh God, that makes just so much sense. You know, if a teenager is overwhelmed with their feelings, and they often are, we know that their brains, and meaning they're highly emotional, the one thing they can't cope with is us parents being overwhelmed as well. Which is why I structured my Gift of Teenagers book, at least the first third to a half is about you. We've got to learn to be steady. We've got to be the bow that is stable from which the arrow shoots forth. And I learnt that directly from her. And it was just such a light bulb moment. I thought that makes just total sense of everything I'd sort of seen on the ground and I'd felt intuitively, instinctively. And she had all the kind of clinical research to back it up. That is a key message of my book, is we parents have got to be calm parents, calmer teenagers. I often felt very lost and overwhelmed as a parent of teenagers. It's so understandable, especially if you've got a few of them. In those moments, I think the most helpful thing that a psychotherapist said to me was, maybe there's nothing wrong here. Maybe you're imagining this to be very scary, very frightening that you're in such a state. But you know what? Maybe it's a really good teacher for you. You're going to have to course correct. Whatever you're doing right now may not be serving you that well. If you're overwhelmed, really obvious, are you really tired? Have you not been sleeping yourself? If you become a martyr mum, which you totally prioritizing your teenagers a help of you, maybe you need to take time out. I mean, crazy thought. Maybe you need to go away for a day. Maybe you need to eat really well to nourish yourself so you've got the resources. Maybe you need a bit of therapeutic help. Maybe you need to read my book. You need to look after yourself. Remember the old mantra, put your own oxygen mask on first before you attend to those around you. So I think if things are really, really bad, don't necessarily panic and freak out and think, oh my God, this is what's gone wrong here. Maybe think, actually, what's going right here? This is a nice way of messaging. Step back, take a think. What could I do a little bit differently? What else is possible? How could I nurture myself, look after myself, think about my own health, think about my psychological health, my emotional regulation, my thinking styles, to put me in a better shape and in a better place. And then I can go back in there with my teenagers. So the word selfish has got a really bad rap. I do not agree with that. You know, self care is actually the way to be the best parent, the best caregiver, the best dad, the best mum for your teenagers. So, yes, things feel really dark. You know, the darkest moment is before dawn. we do want other people involved in raising our teenagers. I took a while to understand this. I think I wanted to do it all. I'm quite a sort of keen bean type, and I thought maybe I was best placed to give all this good advice. And after all, it was my topic, and I have been involved in mental health for a long time. I think it was a bit of an eye opener to realize that other people brought really interesting perspectives, and that in itself was very valuable because teenagers need to hear different points of view to figure out what they really think. And if they're just hearing it from mum or dad, they necessarily have quite a narrow perspective. So, what does that mean? Establishing at first in your head that this is, in general, a good thing to engage with others. I think a key part is actually to stop criticizing them. And it's not that every teacher is going to massively disagree with you, or every sports coach, or if they volunteer for a local charity, which, by the way, is a lovely way to engage with the community and help your teenagers actually become more compassionate to themselves. There's a lot of very negative thoughts in many teenage heads. And learning to be compassionate to the vulnerable is a really nice way for them to learn to be more compassionate. So, all these other figures in their lives, whether that's sports coaches, teachers, people working in local charities, local community centres, they may not have exactly the same views of you, but that's exactly what you want. We want that diversity for a teenager to figure out what really resonates with them. The one thing we don't want is them to think that they've got to be exactly like us. I mean, wouldn't that be boring? Apart from anything else, we want them to line up with what's true for them. What are their gifts? They've got so many gifts. And how can they find those gifts? And they can find those gifts connecting with other people. So, as a parent, try not to criticize, try and let them have their own reactions. Maybe step back. Don't think of it as a rivalry to you. It's okay for them to talk to others. And I know, again, this is tricky because, scary people out there, and have they going to sort of lead your teenagers astray? Actually, I think the scare narrative has gone a bit far. There's a lot of very good intentioned people around, and you will have good instincts for those that perhaps you shouldn't be so trusting of. But on the whole, find that courage, help your teenager connect with other significant adults. It will be to your benefit and their benefit. And anyway, you can't possibly do it all, and you'll feel less guilt tripped. Hey, that's a nice thought, isn't it? How can teachers support our teenagers? How can people in the community support our teenagers? People in local charities, churches, other people involved in youth services, mental health, how can they support our teenagers? Well, the truth is that we are learning so much about what is happening developmentally to our teenagers, what's happening to their brains, what makes for good mental health. Luckily, it's less and less rocket science. There are more and more good things that we outside the parent network can teach teenagers. And that's what I would say to others who are interested in young people's mental health, teenage mental health, is learn the tools, teach them to those around you, be models of good mental health yourself, be models of calm emotional regulation, dealing with your own negative thoughts. And it's from that place that you can be so important to young people and adolescents. The biggest myth I wanted to debunk in this book is basically that this is an almost entirely negative time. I think that, of course, there are pressures, and it would be naive and ridiculous to say that it's not without its challenges. But the way I like to think of parenting through the teen years, it's almost like a beautiful woven piece of fabric. There are lovely pieces of gold threads through the fabric, as well as the more challenging time. Or for another image, it's a bit like panning for gold. If you were in a stream in the Wild West, and you're panning for gold, and of course there's dross. Sometimes it's brutalizing, another meal and they're not eating it, another shouting up the stairs and they're not coming. But you're panning for gold, and every now and again there are these absolute nuggets. And the key thing is just to shift your perspective. Keep looking for the positives. Keep looking for all the things that are going right, all the wonderful sides of them. And if I had one way of changing this perspective and changing this myth that this is nothing but a dark time, is every time you engage with your teenager, just take a tiny moment, it's just a matter of seconds. Close your eyes if you want to, and just bring to mind, and I'm doing it now and I'm feeling a bit emotional. Bring to mind your teenager and just think of all the amazing things about them, their wild creativity, their kindness, their good natured, their altruism. Teenagers do tend to be more altruistic than adults, by the way. Just bring to mind all their qualities and try and focus on them. Don't think of the time that their room was a floor drobe. Think of the time that they emptied the dishwasher and you didn't ask them to do it. And the more you look for the good and the more you focus on it, the more you'll find it. And that is the way to bust the myth that this is a very dark time. It's not. It's full of light. And teenagers are, you're getting the gist by now, a gift. The belief I would like every mum and dad and caregiver and granny and every single person involved in adolescent mental health, the gift I'd like to give to them is to believe in themselves. They have the answers, they have the intuition to drop down, maybe do some breathing techniques, a bit of meditation, and come back down into a kind of pure awareness where they can just feel into what feels good. And I think what they'll find is when they're in their intuition and they're really in lined up with what feels good, they will naturally be drawn to making this a really positive time. They'll think of what's good in their teenager, what's good in themselves, what they value, where they can be curious, where they can learn to connect. And it's all in you. It's all in you. I'm not any expert compared to you. You are the expert in your own teenager. What I'm doing in this book is I'm just giving you some tools to just find those resources which are all inside you, and you've got them, and you've got this, and you can have a great time. The idea that the book will leave a legacy sounds a bit highfalutin, but it's really lovely that you might think it would. I feel quite emotional actually. I mean, I'm 59, and in a way, the book is kind of the fruits of quite a lot of struggle, my own struggle, my children's struggle, some tough times, but we have come through and we've come through together. And I suppose if I wanted a legacy, it would be for anyone involved in raising young people just to have faith, believe in themselves, and just have that confidence that it's going to be okay. You can connect more, you can worry less, you can see this period as a blessing. You can slowly get to know your teenagers and see them as a gift.